All right. Welcome, everybody. Jamie Jan over here and Dr. Lydia. And we are excited to present for you an overview of this new Resonance Academy online course that Dr. Lydia has put together. And I will let her introduce herself and take over.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you again. I'm very excited. It's been a long effort to bring this selective here in Resonance, and it's something we've been talking with Nassim a long time. Temples is always a fascinating subject for all of us in this circle, and it's I think a subject of enigmatic nature. We have so many questions, even till today, and unanswered questions, or questions that we've been trying to answer through many backgrounds, through science, through history, through geology, and through even architecture. I find it really a very complex subject that brings to my attention always that there is no one way to go at it. You really need to bring like a interdisciplinary, let's say, parts of science, philosophy, art, and spirituality all together to try to figure it out. So I'm very excited and very honored, and being back here live with you. Welcome everyone from around the world. We find beautiful temples and sacred places all around the world. And that's something interesting, because you might think that one civilization did one kind of temple and then another one, a different kind of temple. But through all these very long year research, there are some parameters that are found that are actually the same, and they might appear to be different. So there is some particular part of the temple design and its real function that we will explore in this course that applies to almost every temple or sacred place around the world. So just to share a little bit about myself, I'm a trained architect, and I always had this interest, let's say, into how a space can become more supportive of our health and well-being, and how we can create healing spaces, basically, how we can create the most harmonic resonance spaces. And these were my questions because many years ago, I moved to a new apartment that was just new built, and I thought that that was the best choice I could make. Nobody had lived inside there before. And actually, after a year of living there, I got very sick. And then I started really uncovering various reasons that made me sick, from the toxicity and the off-gassing of the new materials to the location of my bed, which is today called geophatic stress or earth radiation geophysical anomalies, to the materials and a few other problems. So that was something that I have lived personally, I have experienced personally, and then I start making very deep changes, firstly in the space, and also for myself, and having some health healing journey. But the space, when I really healed the space and I changed things and I really discovered the reasons, my health just got back very fast. So it was really interesting to understand how a space can affect us so much. And if you think about it, we are living in a building for more than 90% of our time. And literally, we are bathed in all these fields, physical fields, shape fields, geometrical fields, chemicals, and all sorts of things almost during our whole day. So that drew my attention a lot. And then I thought, okay, if our buildings in their, let's say, negative side can be so toxic, and especially modern constructions that are created without consciousness, let's say most of them, what if we put our awareness to create spaces that are really healing? And since I was very young, I had this very weird connection with temples without really knowing exactly why, but I was really fascinated. And I saw them out of the context of religion. I always saw them like a living being, and that they always emanated something special, even just looking at them in a picture, you know, not only being there physically. Of course, the physical presence is something else, but the field, the morphic field, the information is still there in a picture. So I think that many of you probably have had experiences like that, visiting places like this, temples or other sacred spaces around the world. Some are very, very old, some are newer, but from what I've seen, the sacred knowledge, maybe not all of it because it was very complex, it was preserved at least until 500 years ago, that we still have evidence of this sacred knowledge, this sacred science of ancient temples. So there are so many interesting questions around temples, and one of them is why people in ancient times actually invested so much time and energy and money for creating these huge constructions, very complex in nature and in their design. And even today, actually, we have no way of replicating these constructions. As an architect, I can tell you this, even with all the greatest technology we have, there is no way we can build another Pyramid of Giza. There is no way we can build a Parthenon. I can tell you a small story about the Parthenon, which is some years ago, the people, the team that are working on the preservation of the Parthenon, they opened one of the columns, and by saying open, I mean the column is made by discs, just one on top of the other, very heavy discs of some tons each, made of solid marble that are carved to a very, very fine level of detail and exactness. So these discs, in between them, in the center, they had something like a copper link. And when they took these discs apart, this copper link was not oxidized at all. After 2,000 years, approximately, from the Parthenon, that means that this copper had never been in contact with air. So that means that there has never been any, let's say, distance between the two discs in that level of exactness that not even a little bit of air could go through. And that's really amazing if you think about it. So these people, the preservation team, they actually tried to 3D print some of these discs because there are some missing and they want to put the Parthenon back together. So they actually 3D printed one of them, and they took it to one that was already there and tried to see how it fits. And actually the 3D print didn't fit as good as the original one. So this, for me, raises a lot of questions in terms of how they were designed and how they were constructed. And as we've discussed with Nassim many times, and as he has been sharing for many, many years in his sharings, basically it had to be some higher civilization, higher in terms of technology and consciousness, I guess, because otherwise we still cannot understand how they were built. And another question that I always felt is so important is why these buildings were created. What was their real function? Was it just for, let's say, divine worship? Or were there other functions to them in terms of there is an actual scientific function of the temple that can be seen through its various characteristics that, as I said before, there are some characteristics that we will explore in detail in the course to what these temples were actually made to do. And it's really fascinating because the more you have evidence of these things and the more you discover them in another temple and in another temple, then it's like, wow, this is like a sort of universal parameters and archetypes that these temples had. So this has been a very long journey for me and not an easy one, I have to admit, but it has been something that also gave me beautiful gifts through this journey, and also a lot of answers to my questions, to my burning questions. I have spent like endless nights through mornings reading and studying and trying to fit these things together, but it has been my passion and my mission to bring this together. And so I'm very excited to be able to share that with you guys and people around the world that are interested. Last year, I don't know if some of you that are here were in Mexico last year, but we were in the trip with Nassim in Mexico. It was an amazing experience, and we got to share some things live, visiting, being in the grounds of these incredible temples in Mexico, pyramids in Teotihuacan, and then other ones up north around the Yucatan area. And it's one thing, of course, trying to describe something, and another thing being there and feeling it. And from what I can say until now, I think one of the most important things we can do in our lifetime, and more than ever now, is to connect with the sacredness and reconnect the temples and reactivate the temples anywhere we can, and also inside of us, because that's the same thing. So this course is a mixture of many aspects, as I said, of this interdisciplinary parts of science and art and architecture, and also, let's say, spiritual teachings. And it's meant to help you understand more in depth what this being that is temple is meant to do, and how it's meant to interact with people mainly. And it's a knowledge that I believe we all have, and we are here to remember it. And I have had people going through this information, and actually they gave me feedback that they were into tears of remembrance, of remembering all these things from the past. One of the things that I have been very passionate about is Earth radiation, and this is something that I explored in an entire PhD. That was very complicated and challenging because I was trying to see how location, the geology, let's say, below where we're living or where we are sleeping, how it can affect us. And also, how is that differing in a long-term or in a short-term exposure? And from there, I started looking into location of temples. And then just through that, more and more information, more and more data was coming together. And it was just revealing so many beautiful things. And then from there, all the other pieces started to blend together, finishing that PhD and putting research of many, many years and a lot of effort of trying to connect the dots, basically. So the sacred science of ancient temples basically has, let's say, 4 main parts. And there is a general part that it's meant to, let's say, open up questions and a short journey, let's say, around the world in different temples. So you can get to feel what we're talking about for those of you that have not traveled so much. And then apart from this first introduction, there are 4 parts. And the 3 first parts are the 3 basic, let's say, parameters or characteristics that these temples have around the world. Either we're talking about ancient pyramids, or we're talking about Greek temples, for megalithic monuments around Europe or USA, stone circles, and also ancient Gothic cathedrals. As I said, from what I've seen, actually up to 500 years ago, this knowledge is still found, it's still preserved. And in Gothic cathedrals, we find these 3 basic archetypes. So what are these basic archetypes? It's actually what they're here to do, these temples. So first of all, we have the earth location. And as I was saying, it's something that I have explored a lot through this PhD research. And that actually shows us that the place where we are, or the place of a building, plays a very important role. Because there are places in the earth that, let's say, they are neutral. And by neutral, I mean, imagine, let's say, the geological subsoil has no fracture, right? Or it has no difference in its geology. So if you, for example, you have 2 types of different rocks meeting, then you have these discontinuities, and then you have these various geophysical anomalies. And it's very interesting to see that, and we explore that through different maps and different, let's say, charts that I put together for these temples, that almost all the temples that I have researched until now, they all seem to be found on these geophysical anomalies. So that is a very curious thing to see, firstly because it cannot be a coincidence, because there are too many to be found. But secondly, how did they know? So I get this question a lot from people. And if they're so exactly placed over these anomalies, and as I said before, it's just places where there is a great change or a great shift in the various fields that are created by the earth. How do they know? Well, scientifically speaking, I don't have an answer to that. But what I can say is that there are various options and possible answers to that question. One of them being that there could have been, let's say, different devices or other kind of technology that we are not aware of today that could easily read that. And also another possibility is that this civilization had higher sensitivity of these fields. And that can mean higher consciousness, but also I would like to add to that some thousands years ago, the magnetic field of the earth was far more intense. So as we can understand through that, it will be easier to read these shifts if the field was stronger. Now, as you know, the shift is, the field is just decreasing consistently. The magnetic field is every year less of the Earth. And that's why many people are saying, and scientists, that at some point it might reach zero. And we don't know exactly what can happen then. Some people talk about reversals, pole reversals, and other people talk around that more spiritually and saying that it will begin a new era for our planet and for humanity. I don't have all the answers for that, maybe some intuition there, but scientifically, I don't have something to share on that, but that's a possibility, of course. So firstly, we see the temple and its earth lake. So the location and how it actually links with these underground anomalies, or otherwise called geophysical anomalies scientifically. The second part is the design of the temple itself. So we have the building body and its design. And this comes down to three basic things. One of them is the shape or geometry. And we will explore in detail in this course why sacred geometry was used in these temples. So it's not just a matter of being sacred, and the reason we call it sacred until today is because it has been used in the design of cathedrals, of ancient temples, and because we considered in the past these spaces sacred, basically we call the design of them, or the geometry that was used in them, sacred geometry. But there is a special reason for that, and we didn't invent these geometries, or this natural geometry as we like to call it today. We learned that geometry from the structure of space-time, as Nassim has now proved with all his beautiful research. So basically, we replicated that. And then the question is, how did the civilizations know so in such a detail about all that, about these proportions, about golden ratio, and even more than that, you know, the different shapes. And for example, the Pyramid of Giza has such a level of exactness in its design, and in a way that we cannot imagine today for such a huge building. Of course, we can have very exact building structures, but not of that size. So the first part, as I said, is the geometry or the shape. The second part is the materials. So very interestingly, in many temples around the world, we see that they actually didn't just use the stone or the material that was available closely there. And that will make more sense, because it will make everything easier and you know, less cost and less effort and less time. But we find that they almost always used very specific kind of material and stone that was carried from a long distance, and sometimes over mountains or water bodies and things like that, that it's not just so easy to transport, right? So one wonders, why would they do that? And of course, we will see that in detail in the course, but the short answer is obviously because they wanted some particular properties of that stone. They just didn't want any stone. They wanted a stone with very particular properties. And of course, I'm not talking about one specific stone. I'm just saying that it's stones with similar properties. And we will see that in detail. And the third part of the building design was the size. So, okay, we have determined the design and the geometry and the shape. We know what we're going to build it with, but then what size? So the size is something that always, of course, has relation to the size of the planet itself, because of course we are building on Earth, and that's something important. But then how does that relate with the size of, let's say, the structure of the space-time? So that's the third part. And then here we let's say complete the second parameter, which is the building body design. And then the third part is the sky link. So as you can understand, we have an earth part, a middle part, and a sky part. And the third part with the sky is related to archaeoastronomy. We go more into detail, looking into what archaeoastronomy is, how it was incorporated in the design of the temples, and actually trying to reply to why it was so important. What was the real reason that all these ancient civilizations did so much detailed work in their design to how to connect the building itself in various ways, because different temples have different ways that they connect to constellations and to celestial phenomena. So we try to answer that, and it's a, as you can understand, it's a whole complex being that in a way forms a link between the sky and the earth, and puts these two elements together in the middle part, let's say, in the mesocosm that we are exploring here in Earth. And the fourth part, we go deeper in exploring the various functions of temples, aside the one that is related, of course, to religion or just worship. As they said, they worship the gods. And looking through experiments, scientific experiments on people and plants and things like that, there are functions that are revealed beautifully. And we have actually started a few years ago with a big team here in Greece of professors from University of Geophysics, and also we have archaeologists and philosophers and technicians and engineers. And I have been putting that together with my professor of geophysics, and we have actually asked for a permit from the archaeological authorities of Greece, and now we have the permit for 50 ancient Greek temples to actually carry out measurements on the earth itself, on the location itself, on the temple, inside and outside, and also bring people there and have biomedical tests and see how people react to it. And of course, ancient Greek temples are not complete anymore. I mean, it's not like the whole building is there, but I have seen that they still have very powerful energy, and the field is still there. And of course, activating them further, it's a beautiful work, like the one Nassim has done, for example, in Egypt or Peru. So this is an ongoing project, something that is very dear to my heart. And we are also planning with Nassim the same thing for Teotihuacan, and we're trying to get a permit there. And my vision and my dream is to be able to do that in temples around the world. So in that way, we can have a lot of consistent data from these measurements and really go deeper in understanding this beautiful technology, which I really believe and have seen through my research that was so important for the well-being of people in ancient times, and it's still today. It's just that today we have I believe we have strayed kind of away from sacredness, from being like close to this feeling of sacredness in our daily life, and also finding our temple within and finding the sacred space within, and also holding a sacred intention throughout our day or in the way we do things, simple things. And that's one other reason that I believe that going back to this knowledge and finding this knowledge again and reawakening this part of ourselves and remembering all these things that we all already know, it's just that we've forgotten. It's so important, especially for the times that we're going through. I really believe it's our way out from the global crisis that we are now facing in so many levels. So that's from me opening this introduction. Jamie, are you there?
You ready for these questions? There's a lot of really good questions.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. We'll go from the top because you guys have been voting. And the top question is Lisa Simmons saying, actually, hi and thank you. I'm interested in the common sonic properties of the temples. So maybe you could just speak a little bit on the sonic properties of the temples.
Of course.
There's a lot of questions. And so depending on how deep you want to go, sometimes we like to do the kind of lightning round so that we can get to a lot of questions.
Sure.
Maybe pique people's interest into, what the course would speak to in terms of some of these questions.
Sure. So there is a lot of work done in the field of what is called archaeoacoustics. And we actually have a professor that researches that in our team for measuring the Greek temples. What I can say in a short answer is these temples were built in such a way that they will form resonant cavities, which means that they had perfect acoustics. And the reason for that is something we look into deeper in the course, but in short, it actually helps the temple actually resonate. It's like a perfect resonator. So something that has a perfect acoustic in the sound waves, it will have, let's say, perfect resonance or harmony in the geometry fields or in the electromagnetic fields. So that actually is just a sign of the result of this perfect design that these ancient temples had. And it was something that it was very needed to have, let's say, this perfectly ringing structure. Imagine that you have like a bowl, right? And you ring it and it just has a perfect resonance in the sound. But that can only happen, as I said, through the geometric design. So in short, that's the most important reason around the resonance, the sonic resonance, and it's something that is, let's say, very well studied in archaeoacoustics, if you're like specifically interested in looking into that.
Awesome. And now we have a great question from Jeffrey Colebrook, who says, it has been reported that sacred spaces are related to water underneath the sites. Our water group, hosted by Dana, has connected with David Gibson from sound healing, and our discussion has led to the concept of bottling water of arc crystal water with the frequency of sacred sites, and use the cymoscope from John Stuart Reid to map the geometry of the sound of sacred sites. Do you have a database of the resonant frequencies of sacred sites? And would you be interested in collaborating with our water and sound studies to develop and catalog the healing properties for use in the medical profession?
Wow, that's a mind-blowing question. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Jeffrey, right? Okay, lovely. First of all, amazing work, what you're doing. I'm so excited when I get to hear people, you know, from around the world doing similar things. It just brings so much joy to my heart. Actually, John Stewart Wright is in our team. We have collaborated for many years. We also use it in design of our architecture with Arturo, my husband, who's also an architect. The water research that you're doing, we are also planning to do exactly the same in Greece. It's part of our research. So we will place water in ancient temples, and then we will analyze it, not only with the CIMAscope, but we will analyze it in terms of spectrography and surface tension and a few other parameters. So yes, I will be very interested to collaborate with you and get to know more about your work. And in terms of your question, the database of the resonant frequencies of sacred sites, we have some limited data until now, because currently we are trying to find the funding to carry out all this huge protocol that I've developed through this PhD, to basically bring all the team together. We are a team of around 20 to 30 people, and we need to stay there at least a few weeks. So that requires like a fund that we are trying to now gather. As I have seen, there are some predominant frequencies that I could just mention. Around 110 hertz. I have seen that a lot, but I would say that in the spectrum of these temples, there are various frequencies that I have seen that are not always similar. And I could say that also this is the signature of the temple. And not every temple has the same, let's say, signature pattern, I would name it. They do, as I said before, they have all these different characteristics and archetypes, but they have a slightly different, let's say, effect in terms of how they produce that effect. So yeah, I would stick to the 110 that I have seen a lot, and we have actually seen how that can influence the brain, and it's very interesting research. So yes, please connect with me. You can find my email in geophilia.org. That is our website, and from there we can get together, and I'll be happy to share more and get to know about your work as well. It's fascinating. Thank you so much for the beautiful question.
And I know Jeffrey would appreciate me reminding this group that there's excellent discussions on this very topic in the community forum of the Resonance Science Foundation. I put a link to it in the chat, and I'll do same on YouTube here in a second. But I encourage you guys to continue this conversation and connecting with each other, because a lot of the folks that are in the chat I see here on the webinar are people that are regularly on our Zoom meetings and are active in the community forum, and that's totally free, and you can access it from the website resonancescience.org. So thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, the next question is Thomas Reed, who says, can you speak about the hieroglyphs on the obelisks in Egypt and what information they convey? I'm especially interested in the white marble or alabaster obelisks.
Okay. I don't know if Jamie, maybe you're more relevant to answer this question.
I mean, I can answer that in terms of the obelisks in general and in terms of physics, but I cannot answer what the hieroglyphics say.
Me neither.
Yeah, I can't translate hieroglyphics. I don't know very many of the symbols or anything like that. So the short answer is that neither of us can properly answer that question. However, I do have an entire course on ancient Egypt, but it's concentrating mostly on the ancient technologies and the sacred geometry of the temples, not, you know, translating the hieroglyphics. And to make a long story short and not get into it, a lot of the hieroglyphics are from dynastic Egypt, right, which is the time of the pharaohs. And there's evidence that points that some of the major technology of Egypt may have come before that time period, and then people put hieroglyphics onto them, right? Like King Ramses went around with a chisel and said, put my name on that, put my name on that, literally, right? So it doesn't mean that he built all those things. But anyway, that's a different course. That's Ancient Egypt Revisited.
I will just add something from my side of research on obelisks, but basically they are always placed in these anomaly locations, and they are actually, let's say, kind of an earth acupuncture. So it's a very, very interesting subject, but it's not what Thomas asked, but I just wanted to add this little note on that.
Yeah, because the obelisks are essentially giant tuning forks. And when we were in Egypt, Nassim would make us go put our head against this ridiculously large obelisk that had fallen over. And then he'd go up to the tip of it, and with his fist, he'd just go boom, and you'd hear the entire thing resonate. And it was, you know, hundreds of tons. So
yes,
there's some good stuff about that in the course. But now, next question, Tom Phillips. Copper never exposed to air is possible evidence of geopolymer, i.e. cement, as per Professor Joseph David Davowitz. Do you see geopolymers as a real possible construction explanation, especially in limestone or marble?
Yes, lovely question. Actually, from the deepest research I've done until now, and I'm saying that because, you know, sometimes you need to revisit science and you need to revisit your own findings. But I'm pretty sure now that the Pyramid of Giza was made with geopolymers, and I have gone through papers and publications that actually explain that in detail how it's done. So it's using this kind of, let's say, melted stone. And of course, that can produce higher level of exactness. However, I'm not entirely sure about the marble in Greece. I have not seen evidence, because the way to distinguish a geopolymer from actually a carved stone is that you will find a different structure in the rock. And that is very clear for Egypt. But for what I've seen in Greece, it seems like it's actually a solid rock. What we don't know is how they carved it. And for example, there are objects that we saw last year in Mexico that, for example, they are obsidian. We saw them in the archaeology museum, anthropology museum, sorry. And these are actually made with highly polished stone, and I'm talking about solid stone. So I think there is a mixture in temples. Some temples use this geopolymer kind of building, and others had carved stone. So we need to go more in detail and take samples and then, you know, analyze them in a laboratory. But geopolymer is definitely the answer for many temples in ancient times.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom Phillips, for that great question. Next question is Cynthia Beldos. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing all these people's names. How does your work align with that of Buckminster Fuller?
Okay. In terms of my research work on temples or my work as an architectural design, I'm not entirely clear there. It's one or the other.
They're just asking about Buckminster Fuller in general. So anything
that
relates to Buckminster.
Yeah, of course. The sacred geometry part of a temple, it's related to all the work of Buckminster Fuller in terms that it relates also to the structure of space-time. So it's one and the same thing, it's just we're talking about it in different names, right? So this was an impeccable part, as I said before, of the design of the ancient temples, because it had to create this resonance, this resonant cavity. And of course, there are many ways to do that, but the important part is the ringing, let's say, of these, the proportions that create that perfect tuning. This is also something that we have applied in modern architecture, and taking from geniuses and geometrists like Fuller is something that can take the design and also the feeling inside the space to another level. So he's a great teacher of both me and Arturo, my husband. He has explored very, very deep these subjects, and he'll be actually having a course in more detail of this very soon in the English platform. He has already started with one in the Spanish one, so keep your eye on that. It's a beautiful, beautiful course.
Yeah, you guys are like the Resonance Academy power faculty couple, because he's got a course in Spanish that we're in the process of translating into English, and your course is obviously in English, and we're eventually going to translate it into French and Spanish. And we're working on getting the Unified Science course that is in English, French, and Spanish right now. We're starting to work on Portuguese next. So
wow, amazing.
Eventually the goal is to have all the courses in all the languages, but that's a large project, as you can imagine. But 2021 will be a lot of translating. Okay, so next question from Virginia Green. Will the course cover pre-colonial / ancient Americas, like Mayan structures, Olmec and Tiwanaku?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Tiwanaku, yes. Tiwanaku. Actually, I even mentioned that particular temple inside the course. And of course, the ancient Americas is something that I am so interested in. Also, I just find it really very special, the temples there. And I find it also like we have this luck in a way that most of these temples are quite complete. You know, I was born in Greece, so seeing temples that are half, you know, part of the temple is there and part is not, it just takes away something from it. But seeing temples like that are so old and they still have, you know, the whole building body there is just fascinating. So of course, yes, we will see ancient Americas there, and definitely Tiwanaku is there.
Awesome. Thank you, Virginia. That was a good question too. Okay, now we've got a question from Nan Woodman, and this is saying, I'm curious as to the equipment you were using in the video about your journey. Are they to pick up on electromagnetic fields? Could you let us know specifically about that equipment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nan. Great question. We actually have a series of devices we use, and it's a whole protocol, but basically they include very special devices for picking up magnetic field, like the Earth's magnetic field, ion, like air ionization. Then we have ground penetrating radars, and like geophysical devices that can actually measure the voltage of the Earth. So we can see like telluric currents, like electric currents inside the ground. And we have also gamma radiation devices. So it's a mixture and a very specific protocol, because what I have seen is that one device by itself is not enough to have a clear picture of what's going on. So I have put together this protocol that involves some devices that are, let's say, more developed than the classic geophysics, and then we have the classic geophysics that my professor and his team use. And then we have a more holistic reading, and we can really understand what's going on. But I've seen if it's just one, let's say a magnetometer, a geomagnetometer, that can be good for a starting point, but because of the heavy electromagnetic pollution that we have, the artificial radiation, that can get disturbed. The reading can get a bit disturbed. So the best way is to just combine things, as I've just mentioned, and then you start to have clearer results.
Excellent. Thanks, Nan, for that question. Next, Virginia Green is simply asking, is your book, The Power of Sacred Location, available as an ebook or an audiobook?
Lovely. It's actually available as a printed book and as an ebook. There is no audiobook. It's a lot of graphics also in there with maps and things that actually cannot be transmitted through audio. So that's the reason for not having an audiobook.
Okay, get ready, because Jeff Colebrook is back with another one of his questions.
Okay.
And he says, crop circles are most often placed at sacred sites, and they've been studying the energy there with instruments. Have others used these same instruments in temples?
Okay, this is a very interesting topic. Thank you for the question again, Jeffrey. Yes, crop circles are very usually found next to ancient temples, and I believe one reason for that is the Earth location, as I was saying, and these geophysical anomalies that we see. There is a team of people that I have been in connection that they carry out a lot of detailed readings with instruments, and actually it's electromagnetic readings of these places, and they can actually tell if it's a fake crop circle or if it's a real one. I have not been into this subject myself, but I do know that there is a lot of data that this team has. Some of these devices, I don't know exactly the ones that they have used, for example, in this team, but we also do electromagnetic readings, and we do air ion readings, as I said, which is something that is usually found in crop circles. Like the air is usually very charged in the place where the crop circle is. So yes, there are of course some similarities, and I really believe that this is the most modern version of a temple that we have today, these crop circles. Because today, whatever temple has been built in modern times, unfortunately, maybe most of them, if not all of them, they are very far away from this sacred knowledge that ancient civilizations had to create these temples. So that's what I can share for crop circles.
Excellent. Okay, let's see. How about a question from Angela Jefferson? Is an approximate timeline provided for the decrease of magnetic fields of the Earth?
Not that I'm aware of. We don't know exactly, but it could take, I think, some time. I don't think most probably we're going to see a zero value magnetic field in our lifetime, most probably. But as far as I know, there is no specific timeline that, it's something very solid that can be, let's say, attributed to a next century or the next 1,000 years.
Great. Augustine, oh man, I'm going to butcher this. Ron Sagliolo, sorry. Do you recommend a way to detect and or avoid geophatic stress areas?
Okay. Geopathic, yeah, it's okay.
What is it?
Geopathic.
Geophatic.
Yeah, not what he wrote, because I'm looking into it, is the actual term is geopathic. Actually,
Geopathic.
pointing that out, the word geopathic is a Greek word which comes from geo, earth, and pathos, let's say sickness. It's something that I also explain in the course, that a location by itself, it's not destructive or let's say beneficial. That has to do also with the time exposure, and that's something that changes the whole let's say paradigm in terms of geopathic stress. So I actually like to call them geophysical anomalies. And of course, yes, if someone sleeps on it 8 hours a day, 365 days a year for a few years, that can create a lot of problems. And I present all this evidence, which is all the things that I worked on my PhD. But of course, there is ways to the question was to detect it. And sorry, if you can repeat the question again. I lost it.
Oh, sorry, I moved it.
Yeah.
That's my fault.
I think it was for harmonization. Yes, we have very specific devices that we use in geophilia for let's say the design or redesign of spaces. So if you are interested, look in our website and give me an email, and I can let you know more details. But they're basically, there is no way to cut it out. You cannot stop the geophysical anomaly. It's there. What you can do is transform it, basically harmonize it through making the waves and the, let's say, the shape of the wave itself more bioavailable, so it's not any more destructive, but the body can process it without a problem. That's the main core of the technologies we use.
Nice. Sonia Asmar is saying, hi, I'm grateful to be able to attend this, and thank you for this rich and great topic. I am interested in knowing if you've done any research in Petra, Jordan. If yes, how is it possible to know the details of that?
Thank you, Sonia. Petra is a place that is very dear to my heart, and I was actually so excited about this year's trip with Nassim, but it ain't happening, as you all know. I have never been to Petra. I am dreaming of it since many years, so I guess the time has not come, and we have not done any measurements yet, but it's in the plans for sure. It's in my top list, like the top 5 places outside of Greece to make measurements. So stay tuned, and as soon as we have something there, you will be the first to know it. Thank you so much for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. I can say, having been on all of the resonance trips and gone to like Peru and Mexico and Egypt a couple of times, after the last Egypt trip, I went to Petra for my birthday, and I'd have to say, like, literally #1 most astonishing, most spectacular place that I've ever been. And I've been to a lot of places. It was kind of like being in awe of the Egyptian temples, but you're in Moab, Utah. Right? Like, have you ever been in Moab, Utah? Do you guys know about that? Do a Google image search for Moab, Utah. It kind of looks like that. Crazy rock, you know, and the structures are just carved out of the cliffs. And so there needs to be more study of like how they were able to do that, that carving, because it's astonishing level of precision there as well. So thank you for that question. Let's see, how about Bruno Brondel is asking, do you use just scientific equipment, or do you also use like pendulums and such stuff to research the temple energies?
Okay, I get this question a lot, and obviously it's very natural to wonder. Thank you, Bruno. I have been trained in radiesthesia, so I use different L rods and other kinds of antennas to detect, let's say, more subtle things in temples. But what I've seen for myself, and also trying to, let's say, replicate measurements, because the let's say, the device in case of dowsing, as it's called, or the aesthesia is the physical body. If one is out of tune and, you know, I'm having a bad day, or I'm having negative emotions, or I'm not centered enough, I will not pick the right things. So I like to mix that with the scientific instrument. So I like to use the way of science because it's something that is replicable. So most of the time, if someone else gets the same device that I'm using and does the same measurement in the same time that I'm doing, they will find probably the same measurements. Unless you actually fixate your mind in altering your results, that can happen. But unless you don't do a work like that, these are replicable. And the point of all this research is to be able to replicate things and share things with people. That is not just, oh, it's something that I picked up or I felt. We're trying to decode that. What is this thing that people felt inside the pyramid? Okay, we can sense it and we can dowse it, but okay, what does the physiological parameters say? So I like to mix it, and this part, it's not something that I share, let's say, in my scientific publications, but we do have it as a part of our research group, and we like to combine both parts.
Great, thank you. Now, Forrest Hudson has a great question. When referring to specific geochemical characteristics of different stone types, as an example, when building with such materials, do the dimensions, length, width, and height of the specific material and their overall size relation to the dimensions of the entire structure cause the building materials to resonate at different frequencies?
Okay, give me a second. I will just go through it again because I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, it's a little challenging to know exactly how that phrasing is getting at, but I think what they're asking is, you know, does the size and the type of material that you're making these big pieces of buildings in relationship to the whole building, does that change the resonant frequencies?
Yes, definitely does. So something that is very interesting seen in the ancient temples is what we call fractality. And also Nassim uses it in his work in terms of bringing the concept of holofractographic, right? So the same level of detail that was put in the smaller pieces was made in the bigger, the whole structure. So they made sure that there is a fractality to that, and there is this self-similarity in different scales that puts everything together. And of course, it's how everything in the universe is created. So of course, that will increase the resonance. And as I was saying before, to make it this perfect resonator in different ways, acoustically, electromagnetically, etc. So the answer is yes, certainly.
Okay, we're getting down to, you know, only a handful of questions. You've been rocking them out. Good work. Cynthia Aldos is asking, is there a sacred connection between longitude and latitude? So if I'm at the same latitude as the Great Pyramid, for example, am I sharing sacred energy or resonance with that location?
Wow, that's an amazing question. Actually, it's something that I've never looked into it in detail, but from all the things that I've seen until now, I would say that there is definitely a sharing of information in the different circles, like what we call a big circle around the Earth, that actually form the latitude and the longitude lines. And we do see that, for example, there are temples that are linked and they are found in same latitudes around the world and longitudes also. But there is also very interesting work that is done with grids, and that's something also we look at into this course. For example, there are lines that cross around the earth and link different temples around the world. So my feeling to this is, of course, there are lines for a very particular reason, that they share the same energy. So that actually, let's say, travels around the same line. So some of this energy is getting shared because the information is there, let's say, in that specific line, if that makes sense.
Okay, here we have a good one from Peter Yeo. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Further to Lisa's question, and with the encouragement from Chris and Cynthia, does Dr. León have any intel on Glastonbury Abbey in the UK? It was ruined during the dissolution of the monasteries, but there is one building left intact, supposedly the abbot's kitchen. The internal structure and acoustics of this small building struck me immediately on entry. I can't believe it was just a kitchen, while my whistle went on for ages. The center of the roof looks like a stone jet engine, not a temple, but very interesting nonetheless. That's from Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Actually, I used to live in London for some years, and I used to travel at least a couple of times per year to Glastonbury. I was just very drawn to this place. And I feel you. I had the same questions at that time. It was a very long time ago. And I was like, okay, something just doesn't make sense about the story they're telling about this place. You know, as you say, a kitchen. So I absolutely agree with you. And I don't have a clear scientific answer to give you, but what I can share with you is that there is a lot of myth and legends around Glastonbury, and I don't consider those as a scientist as something that I should not take into consideration. On the contrary, there is a phrase from Tolkien that I love that says, history became a legend and legend became a myth. So I think behind myths, there are legends and there is history to be seen. So there is a lot of myths around Glastonbury and a little bit of scientific evidence that it was the place of Avalon. So they say that the area was actually covered with water, and there are actually findings there of shells and boats of another era. You can look into that even further, but my feeling is it's the remains of another kind of spiritual center. And exactly what is going on with the buildings that are there, you know, it's something that we see in Egypt, that there was one pyramid that was another era, and then they came and they added this, and then, you know, so it's a very mixed situation that it's not very clear to decipher and say, oh, it's from there. So I think the same has happened with Glastonbury, but for sure, it's a very important energetic center.
Excellent. Now we have somebody asking, Julian Ritchie is asking me, actually, regarding the fallen obelisk you had your ear to while Nassim knocked it on the end. Has the obelisk been analyzed to determine the resonant frequency or frequencies? Does your Ancient Egypt Revisited course touch on resonant frequencies? I'm not aware of the exact frequencies of that obelisk, but I can tell you that the theory, one of the theories, is that they were literally meant to ring like tuning forks. And I talk about the resonant frequencies of all these structures that I go into in relation to their geometry and the unified physics and the unified field theory that Nassim Haramein developed. So I would encourage you to check out that course, because it's got, you know, it's not technical, it's not a technical course, and it's me presenting kind of like PowerPoint style for 8 hours, just about the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, and the Osirian in Abydos mostly, and then Egypt in general, but focusing on those 3 sites. I don't know, Dr. Lydia, do you have anything you'd want to comment on the resonant frequencies of those? Okay, so
no, there is not something specific I am aware of.
Okay, well, let's do a couple more because we're already 10 minutes past the hour, but that's all good. We can keep going a little bit more, but you've been a great sport in answering just like rapid fire, so many questions. Chris Ongmen is asking, do you have any thoughts on why magnetic north has been moving so much in the last number of years?
Okay.
I think that's more of a geology question.
Yeah, I wouldn't know so much about it, but I think our planet is shifting in many different ways. And of course, that has to do with the planet's inner core. The magnetic field, as far as we know until now, is derived from the different layers of melted iron that move in different directions. But let's say no one has been inside the core of the earth to know exactly what's going on. So my guess is there's some shift coming from inside the core that is causing also the shifts in the magnetic north. And we do know that in the past there has been shift of the poles. They just shifted in north, south, etc. But I don't know more details about that.
Yeah, the magnetic field of the Earth, just like all magnetic fields, are what you would call a dynamic equilibrium. It doesn't just sit there and not move. And so like the rotation of the Earth has a physical pole and the magnetic field has a different pole, and they move in relation to each other, and they have been moving for a really long time. They haven't just been moving recently. They've picked up speed a little bit. And it used to be that the pole was more in Canada side, and now it's moving towards Russia side. But that's normal. I wouldn't say there's anything unusual, but the causes are probably very complex, and we don't know. Like, no one really knows. Just like most people don't really know most things about how the universe works, which is why it's important to try to figure this stuff out, and why Nassim has been like breaking some serious ground. I mean, I'm excited for this new paper because having been in touch with Nassim over a period of time, every time there's a new layer, he's super excited. And then he's like, but now I have to incorporate this into the paper. And so the reason it's taking a long time is because that paper is becoming more and more epic. I'll put a link in the chat about it. How about one more question? Are you down?
Okay, let's go.
Question. This is a good one. What are your thoughts and your opinions on the origins and the functions of the ancient site Göbekli Tepe in Turkey?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a deep one. I have a lot of mixed thoughts on that. To be able to give more strong answers to this question, I would really have to go there and do measurements of the kind of measurements we do, because of course there are all kinds of measurements to be still done in the place. My feeling is that it was a ceremonial place, and for some reason at some point it was not meant to be used anymore. So actually, I don't know why, but I have this feeling that we shouldn't be messing with this place today. That's my feeling about it. And I have some strong evidence, and I have talked to a lot of people around it. I think it's a very powerful place. And it's just that these ancient temples and these sacred spaces are actually a very complex technology that if we are not aware of how they work, you know, we might just go there and make a mess, let's say, because we don't have the consciousness to actually work with them and activate them or use them for the right reason. So I think we're very far away until now to understanding what this place was meant for. And we need to do more research, but certainly it has a lot of answers for questions that we have been having for many decades in humanity.
Well, thanks. What a session. I really appreciate hearing so much about this, and you guys should definitely go check out Dr. Lydia's course. It's fascinating to just hop around the world and get that sense of how little we really know about our ancient past. And you know, Dr. Lydia is one of the people that's really pushing the envelope, not just going down the traditional route like Nassim does in physics. She's looking at it from a fresh perspective and willing and able to look at any source of information and not kind of prejudging, which I think happens across all of science right now. And that's why Resonance Science Foundation has been on this mission to literally try to unify science through understanding the universe. And I feel like if we can unify all of the sciences and look at everything as one thing instead of compartmentalizing, then we'll unify everything else, because science is very broad and it kind of addresses all aspects of our reality. And so I feel like you guys are really helping us by being on this call and being active in the community, because it takes like the entire organism, meaning all of the biology of Earth, to coordinate and move the needle of the direction where we're going in the direction we want to go, instead of where we are going now, which is not necessarily the way we want to go, let's just say. I'll let Dr. Lydia kind of give her summary statement. I just wanted to say thank you guys for being here. I'll put some more links in the chat, and we'll see you soon, because there's more courses coming down the line, and we're going to do more calls like this with Resonance Academy faculty. There's a great course coming from Alan Green, and there's another course eventually next year coming from William Brown. And David, I don't know, maybe you can remind me all the other courses or put it in the chat, because there's so many that we're working on. I can't even keep track of them all. So it's an exciting time to be in this community. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for co-hosting this beautiful session. I really appreciate it. And I'm super excited for the course being there finally. And I hope I'll see you there, guys. And we will have, apart from the modules that I have mentioned, we will have 2 live sessions with all your questions and answers, and we can go more into details of things that you're more interested in. So thank you so much for being here. I look forward to more, try to find some more sacredness in your daily life, open up, look at some temples that you're interested in, and start to learn about it and develop that relationship. Wishing you all a beautiful day and a beautiful weekend ahead. Take care.
All right, we'll see you on the next one, everybody. Become a contributing member of the Resonance Science Foundation, and you get access to the first session of Dr. Lydia's course. So if you want to just kind of check it out, and you also want to check out Robert Grant's course, my course, Adam Apollo's course, William Brown's course, Meredith's course, and Jonathan Quinton's course, Universal Order, for only $5 a month, you guys, $5 a month, you can get access to the first session of all those courses and ask questions on the Zooms of the faculty Q&As, ask questions on the Live with Nassims, gain access to the private Facebook group and the private community forum, and a whole bunch of stuff is going to get added next year. And it helps all of us. This is how we're trying to do it, is like spread it out. A bunch of different people helping a little bit equals Resonance Science Foundation having all these courses coming out to you. So hit up the community forum, and we'll see you on the next Resonance Academy faculty course introduction. Thanks, Dr. Lydia. See you guys soon. I'll put that link in the chat for you guys. I just stopped the YouTube live. It's just us now. I'll put this in there so you can see all this stuff. But yeah, we'll have a recording available of this probably by tomorrow-ish. If not, definitely by Monday. We'll have this up in the, well, it's on YouTube right now. It's probably processing. If you want to watch this whole thing again, you can go to YouTube, and I'll put it on Facebook, and we'll put it up on the website somewhere. All right. See you guys soon.